There is a moment in every trader's life when the charts go silent. Not because the market is calm, but because your mind suddenly realizes something terrifying. The enemy you've been fighting was never the market at all. It was you. Maybe you've felt it already. That eerie pause after a losing streak, where your chest tightens and your hands shake just enough for you to pretend it's nothing. That crushing refusal to close a bad trade because closing it means facing yourself. Or that sickening rush when a green candle blinds you with hope, whispering, "Just one more. You can make it all back in one move." Every trader believes they're here to master strategy, prediction, or pattern recognition. But the truth hits harder than any liquidation wick. Strategy isn't the problem, your brain is. The market exposes every hidden part of you you've spent years avoiding. Your insecurities, your impatience, your childhood wounds, your ego, your secret need to prove something to the world. Welcome to Trading Psychology Stick, where we explore the psychology behind every trade, every loss, and every breakthrough. Quick note, nothing here is financial advice. This is about understanding yourself, the part of trading no course ever teaches. This isn't a video about trading techniques. It's a journey into the underside of the human psyche, seen through the work of professionals who've spent years studying fear, pressure, trauma, and the invisible patterns that sabotage traders long before they ever click buy or sell. So, let me ask you something no trading course dares to ask. What if the reason you keep losing isn't because you're bad, but because you're blind? What if the one part of your trading you've never examined is the only part that actually decides whether you succeed? Because once you see it, you can never unsee it. And once you understand it, the way you trade and the way you see yourself will never be the same again. Section 1. The Myth of the Holy Grail. There is an unspoken belief that nearly every trader carries. Somewhere out there, hidden in a strategy, an indicator, or a pattern, lies the secret that will finally make trading feel easy. The myth of the Holy Grail. The seductive idea that one breakthrough will evaporate all emotional pain, silence all hesitation, and replace every moment of doubt with perfect confidence. But this belief is exactly what destroys traders long before the market ever does. Most traders do not lose because their strategy is bad. They lose because their perception of reality is distorted. They project hope where there is uncertainty. They project fear where there is simply noise. They create meaning out of randomness, blame themselves for chaos, and then punish themselves for not being able to control something that was never meant to obey them. Professional mental coaches saw this early. In golf, people would obsess over technique while ignoring the mental tailspin that began the moment pressure arrived. In poker, players studied odds but crumbled when emotions misread variance as personal failure. In therapy, people believed their pain came from circumstance rather than from deeper patterns they had never learned to name. Trading amplifies everything: your strengths, your insecurities, your wounds, your illusions of control. It strips away pretense and confronts you with the raw version of yourself, the one even you avoid looking at. That's why so many traders cling to the myth of the Holy Grail. It is easier to believe a perfect system exists than to admit that the hardest work will always be internal. Easier to add indicators than to subtract ego. Easier to search for an external solution than to question the internal structure that collapses the moment stress appears. The real turning point begins when a trader finally whispers, "Maybe the problem isn't the market, maybe it's me." The illusion cracks, the myth dies, and the trader takes their first step into real mastery, not through technical brilliance, but through self-awareness. Quick question. Have you ever blamed your strategy when deep down you knew it was something else? Drop a comment. It was me if you've been there. Section 2. The Three Mirrors. Golf, Poker, Trading. If you want to understand why trading breaks people down so quickly, you must first understand the three mirrors that shaped modern trading psychology. Three arenas where pressure, uncertainty, and human psychology collide in different ways, yet reveal the same underlying truth. Golf is a slow, silent battlefield. You have minutes, not seconds, to think about your next shot. Minutes to doubt yourself, to imagine failure, to replay past mistakes, to feel the weight of expectation press against your ribs. That space becomes the birthplace of collapse. Coaches saw athletes crumble not because they lacked skill, but because the silence gave their fear room to breathe. Golf teaches you that the mind does not need chaos to break. It only needs time. Poker flipped the entire equation, where golf is slow and spacious, Poker is sharp and immediate. You can make the right move and still lose. You can make the wrong move and still win. Variance becomes an emotional hurricane, especially for players who interpret randomness as a personal attack. Tilt is the moment your brain mistakes probability for identity. One bad beat and your heart races, your logic collapses, and suddenly you're no longer playing the game. You're fighting your own desperation. Poker teaches you that the mind does not need time to break. It only needs meaning. And then came trading, the third mirror, the purest one, the one that magnifies everything to an unbearable degree. Trading gives you both silence and speed. Long, torturous minutes where price barely moves, forcing you to stew in your doubts. Then, without warning, explosive volatility where one click can be the difference between progress or destruction. It demands the patience of a monk and the reflexes of a predator. It punishes hesitation and it punishes impulsiveness. It exposes your illusions of control, your need for certainty, your unspoken fears, your unresolved wounds, and your inability to regulate emotion under pressure. And unlike golf or poker, where the environment is external, trading brings the battlefield directly into your room. There is no crowd, no dealer, no sound, no physical motion, just you, your thoughts, and a screen that reflects your internal world with brutal honesty. In golf, you can blame the wind. In poker, you can blame the cards. But in trading, the only person left to blame is yourself. These three mirrors taught one truth. Performance is never about the environment. It is about the internal structures you bring into it. Which mirror do you see yourself in most? Comment. Golf, poker, or trader? I genuinely want to know where you're struggling. Section 3. Why sim to real is so painful. Every trader remembers the moment they switched from simulation to real money. On paper, it looks like the same market, the same candles, the same strategy. But the first time your actual capital is on the line, something inside you changes. Subtly at first, then violently. Your heartbeat becomes part of the chart. Your breathing sinks with every tick. Your mind floods with possibilities you never considered when everything was hypothetical. In simulation, you are calm, rational, analytical. You follow your rules because there is nothing inside you resisting them. No fear, no ego, no survival instinct screaming in your ear. The market is just data. You can think clearly because nothing is at stake. But the moment money becomes real, your nervous system awakens. What used to be a losing position is now a threat. What used to be a winning position is now a fragile treasure you could lose at any moment. You negotiate with yourself, justify bad decisions, ignore good ones, hesitate where you used to act decisively, and impulsively act where you once waited with discipline. Simulation doesn't prepare you for this. It can't. Because simulation trains your strategy, but real trading exposes your humanity. Professional coaches saw a pattern so consistent, it felt universal. People who struggled with emotional regulation in daily life collapsed immediately in real trading. People who had never been tested by real adversity mistook discomfort for danger and overreacted the moment pressure appeared. People who relied on logic alone discovered that logic melts under fear. The simulator didn't fail them. It simply never challenged the part of themselves that decides who they become under stress. Real money makes your subconscious believe that your self-worth is on the line, your intelligence, your capability, your future. In simulation, you analyze. In live trading, you interpret. Every tick feels loaded with meaning. Every candle reflects some invisible verdict about your potential. That's why a $5 loss on a real account feels heavier than a $500 loss on demo, because it's not about the money. It's about identity. Underneath the surface, this is what the mind is really saying. If I lose, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I'll never succeed. Maybe everything I've done was a waste. Demo trading never threatens your identity. Real trading does. That's why the shift feels violent. Your psychology is not failing. You're being exposed. You're not broken. You're being revealed. Real trading brings your blind spots to the surface. It shows you the emotional patterns you've ignored. It forces you to face every belief you've been hiding behind. And once you can see the pattern, you can dismantle it. The pain you feel when moving from sim to real is not a sign that you're a bad trader. It is the revelation of the patterns you've carried your entire life. Patterns of avoidance, fear, perfectionism, impatience, and self-doubt. Pause for 10 seconds. Ask yourself, when did real money first change how you traded? What emotion hit you first? Write it down. Naming it is the first step to dissolving its power. Section 4. The psychological map, your navigation system. Every trader believes they know themselves until the moment the market proves otherwise. You think you understand your tendencies, your emotional triggers, your reactions under pressure. But when the chaos hits, when your body floods with adrenaline and your thoughts tighten like a fist, all that self-knowledge disappears. You aren't self-aware, you're submerged. That is precisely why professionals teach the psychological map, a simple, brutally honest system that pulls your mind above the surface long enough to see what's actually happening inside you. Because you cannot change a pattern you cannot see, and you cannot see a pattern while you are drowning in it. The psychological map begins with a single principle: externalizing emotion. When your thoughts stay inside your head, they twist, distort, accelerate, and collapse on themselves. But when you write them down, specifically in the moments when they feel strongest, you create distance. The drowning trader becomes the observing trader. The act of journaling is not about keeping a diary. It's not about writing what happened after the trade is over. It's about documenting what is happening while your psychology is trying to hijack you. Professionals have watched traders transform simply by following one rule: capture the moment in real time. Write the trigger, write the thought, write the physical sensation, write the impulse, write the justification, write the fear. The questions are always the same. What happened? What did I feel? What thought appeared first? What did my body do? What did I want to do next? When you record these micro moments repeatedly, patterns begin to reveal themselves with shocking clarity. You start to notice that hesitation always begins with a single doubt. You recognize that revenge trading always comes from the same emotional spark. You see that greed is always preceded by a moment of internal emptiness. You discover that the body reacts before the mind. Your shoulders tense before you even feel anxious. Your breathing shifts before your logic collapses. And once you see these patterns, something extraordinary happens. Your emotional triggers lose their invisibility. They stop ambushing you. You begin to predict them, not intellectually, but intuitively. The psychological map becomes a navigation system. Instead of being blindsided by your reactions, you start to anticipate them the same way you anticipate price action. You sense tilt before it arrives. You feel the early tremors of panic before they erupt. You recognize the subtle pull of overconfidence before it becomes reckless. Every trade becomes a lesson in emotional causality. Every reaction becomes data. Every journal entry becomes a breadcrumb leading you deeper into your own psyche. And eventually, this map gives you something rare in trading: moment-to-moment clarity. Now, here's the crucial part. This map doesn't just help you understand yourself. It protects you from the most dangerous moment in trading, a moment so powerful it can wipe out weeks, months, or even years of progress in a single impulsive action. Here's your homework. Before your next trade, open a blank page. Write down what you feel, not what you think, what you feel. Do this just once, then come back and comment what emotion you discovered. Section 5, the screw it trade and the misery loop. There is a moment in trading that feels almost mythical in its destructive power, a moment every trader has experienced, yet almost none can explain. It is the moment when something inside you snaps, when your logic evaporates, when your discipline collapses in an instant, and the only thought left in your mind is a quiet, resigned whisper: screw it. This moment doesn't arrive with rage. It comes with exhaustion, the most dangerous emotional state in trading. Exhaustion is what happens when your psychology reaches its breaking point after too many small losses, too much uncertainty, too much pressure, too much self-judgment, too many hours pretending you're fine. You hit a point where you no longer want to win. You simply want the discomfort to stop. And that is the exact second the screw it trade appears. The setup doesn't matter. The chart doesn't matter. Your plan doesn't matter. What matters is relief, and relief feels close enough to grab if you can just force the market to give you one clean win. So you size up, you move stops, you remove stops, you double down. You act with the emotional logic of someone trying to silence a screaming part of themselves. And for a few seconds, it works. The anticipation feels like clarity. The impulsiveness feels like power. The risk feels like freedom. But then the market moves against you, not because it hates you, but because the market is indifferent, and the emotional freefall begins. Panic floods your body. You enter what professionals call identity collapse. where your self-worth fuses with the outcome of the trade. If the trade loses, you feel like you lose as a person. If the trade wins, you feel temporarily safe, not because of profits, but because the internal tension disappears. The tragedy is that even when the screw-it trade wins, it teaches the most destructive lesson possible, that recklessness works. And once your brain learns that, you are trapped. This creates the misery loop. The loop begins in discomfort, spirals into emotional fatigue, erupts into impulsive action, crashes into panic, collapses into shame, and resets the moment you promise yourself you'll be better tomorrow. But tomorrow brings the same stress, the same avoidance, the same pressure, and eventually the loop repeats. The only way out of this loop is prevention, not correction. You cannot out-discipline emotional exhaustion. You cannot out-willpower identity collapse. You cannot fix the screw-it moment once you are already inside it. Instead, you must detect the early signals, the dull emotional heaviness, the shallow breathing, the narrowing of focus, the growing urge to get the trade over with, the quiet anger at the market for not behaving. These microsignals are the warning lights. They show up long before the meltdown. And this is exactly where the psychological map becomes your lifeline. When you've been journaling your emotional triggers consistently, you begin to recognize these signals hours before they turn into impulsive action. You can feel the fatigue building. You notice the subtle shift in your breathing. You catch the first whisper of, "I just want this to be over." And in that moment, instead of trading, you close your laptop. You walk away. You protect yourself from yourself. Think about your last screw-it moment. What triggered it? How long had you been feeling exhausted before you snapped? Comment, "I've been there," if this section hit close to home. Section 6, the root of greed and FOMO. Greed is the easiest villain to blame in trading. Every blown account, every oversized position, every sleepless night, it all seems to come back to one simple explanation. I was too greedy. But that explanation is a lie. Greed is not the cause. Greed is the symptom. Because real greed, the kind that hijacks your logic and blinds you to risk, is not born from wanting more money. It is born from wanting relief. Relief from pressure, relief from fear, relief from the feeling that you're behind in life, relief from the crushing expectation that you should already be successful. Every just one more trade is not driven by ambition. It is driven by the desperate need to escape an emotional state you don't know how to sit with. A trader would double their position, not because the setup was better, but because they were afraid of missing the move everyone else seemed to be catching. Another would refuse to take profit, not because the trend was strong, but because closing the trade meant returning to the emptiness of normal life. Others chased losses not because they believed in the reversal, but because the shame of being wrong was unbearable. Greed, in all its forms, was simply the mask. Under it lived something much deeper: fear of failure, fear of inadequacy, fear of not being enough, fear that one mistake meant you were fundamentally flawed. But the most dangerous layer is the illusion of magic. The fantasy that one trade could change your life, erase your past, silence your doubts, and finally prove something to the world. It is the adult version of believing in Santa Claus, the hope that something miraculous will fix everything. And when the market gives you even a small taste of that miracle, a lucky win, a sudden pump, a rapid string of green trades, your brain imprints the feeling like a drug. Greed is the emotional shortcut to safety. It is the promise of fast certainty in a world full of slow uncertainty. If greed is a messenger, not a monster, then the real question becomes, what message is it trying to deliver? What unresolved belief is it pointing to? What fear have you been running from? And closely related to greed is FOMO. But here's what most traders get wrong. FOMO is often not an emotional issue at all. It's a technical issue wearing a psychological mask. When you don't trust your entries, you chase. When you don't trust your exits, you linger. When you don't trust your system, you second-guess every candle. And when you don't trust yourself, the market becomes a battlefield instead of a blueprint. One coach worked with a trader who spent weeks journaling deeper layers of fear, but on the third session, something became crystal clear. The trader wasn't scared of missing opportunity. He was scared because his system didn't tell him which opportunities were actually his. He didn't have a repeatable trigger. He didn't have a clear invalidation. So, when a chart started moving fast, he wasn't actually feeling FOMO. He was feeling confusion disguised as urgency. Once they fixed the technical inconsistency, the FOMO practically evaporated. No mindset hacks, no meditation, just clarity. But for many traders, FOMO comes from perfectionism, from the belief that you must catch every valid setup, from the belief that missing a winning trade is a moral failure. Here's the truth. Missing moves is a feature of trading, not a flaw. You cannot catch every wave. You cannot capture every swing. The goal is not omnipresence, it's precision. But FOMO has another form, one that hides even deeper. It's not fear of missing the next move. It's fear of experiencing regret. Regret is heavier than fear. Fear imagines possibilities. Regret remembers pain. When you've missed enough moves in your past, your brain builds a trap. If I miss this one, I will feel that pain again. And so you chase, not because you want the trade, but because you want to avoid the emotional aftershock. That's why professionals teach traders to ask a single question when FOMO hits. What exactly do I think I'm losing right now? The answers are always revealing. Some traders realize they are trying to avoid regret. Some discover they are chasing confidence. Some recognize they simply don't trust their strategy enough to say no. Next time FOMO or greed hits you, pause. Write down, what exactly am I trying to escape right now? Answer honestly. Then comment what you discovered. Section 7, the goal-chasing trap, the lucky strike syndrome. Every trader begins with a dream. Some imagine leaving their job. Some imagine financial freedom. Others imagine proving something to their family, their friends, or the version of themselves they left behind. But at the center of all these fantasies is one illusion, the belief that all you need is one good run, one perfect month, one explosive trade, one lucky strike. This belief is the psychological virus that infects traders long before they ever blow an account, and it spreads silently because it disguises itself as ambition. But the truth is darker. You're not chasing success. You're chasing escape. The fantasy is appealing because it promises a shortcut, redemption without transformation, reward without repetition, identity without integrity. And when the market occasionally gives you that hit, a sudden win, a surprisingly strong trend, a streak of profitable trades, it feels like prophecy. You don't see it as variance. You see it as destiny. Your brain lights up in the same way it lights up for gamblers, addicts, thrill seekers. You taste a version of the future you crave, and you will do anything to get back to it. Psychologists call this the hedonic spike, a temporary high that tricks traders into believing their lives can change instantly. But the brain is cruel in how it handles pleasure. After the spike comes the drop. After the peak comes the baseline. And no matter how high you rise, you always come back down to the emotional version of yourself you started with. This is why lottery winners go bankrupt. It's why people who gain sudden fame collapse. It's why traders who catch a lucky run always return to the same destructive habits. Because your internal wiring has a gravitational pull, you don't rise to your goals, you fall to your patterns. And so, the trader finds themselves in a loop. Hope, chase, over-leverage, euphoria, crash, shame, renewed hope that next time will be different. But nothing changes, because nothing inside the trader has changed. And the worst part is not the losses, it's the time. Years dissolve in this cycle, while the trader convinces himself he is trying, when in reality, he is repeating the same emotional algorithm again and again. The lucky strike isn't a financial fantasy, it is an emotional fantasy. It is the longing to feel certainty in a world that refuses to offer it. It is the craving to feel competent in a skill that requires patience. It is the dream of skipping the struggle and arriving fully formed. But mastery doesn't work that way. Be honest, how many years have you spent waiting for that one breakthrough month? If you're tired of the loop, comment, I'm done chasing. Section 8. Why change is so slow. There is a moment in every trader's journey where frustration turns into despair. You study harder. You journal more. You try new strategies, new habits, new affirmations, new routines. And yet, every time the market pressures you, you snap back into the same patterns. It feels like something inside you refuses to evolve, and that feeling is the truth. Change is slow, not because you are weak, not because you lack intelligence, and not because you're not trying hard enough, but because the part of you that collapses under pressure was built long before you ever learned to trade. Your emotional reflexes were wired through childhood, through adversity, through identity, through survival. These patterns have been reinforced for decades, and now you stand in front of a screen expecting yourself to rewrite them in 30 days. But the mind doesn't bend that easily. Professionals call this the rubber band effect. You stretch yourself forward. You study, you practice, you perform. But the moment stress appears, your psychology snaps you back to where it is comfortable, even if that comfort is destructive. This is why people repeat bad relationships. This is why people sabotage opportunities. This is why traders relive the same emotional meltdown again and again. Not because they want to, because the brain protects familiarity, even when familiarity is painful. Change doesn't happen in the moment of insight. It happens in the moment of fatigue, when the excitement of improvement fades, when the novelty wears off, when you're no longer inspired, no longer motivated, no longer riding the high of self-improvement. That is when the real transformation begins, not in the glow of revelation, but in the silence after it, when no part of you feels like working, yet you choose alignment over impulse. But most traders never reach that stage. They mistake the emotional crash after their initial progress as failure, when in reality, it is simply the second phase of change, the phase where the old identity fights to stay alive. The reason this process feels excruciating is because your brain is not just learning a new skill, it is unlearning an old identity. The perfectionist, the overachiever, the people pleaser, the escapist, the gambler, the avoider, all these versions of you show up in trading, and they refuse to die quietly. This is why the timeline for real transformation is not 30 days. It is 6 months to 18 months of consistent, emotionally aware practice. And the key word is not practice, it is consistent. Every burst of progress is followed by a plateau. Every breakthrough is followed by resistance. Every upgrade is followed by a relapse into old patterns. And those relapses are not failures, they are rehearsals. They are proof that the transformation is happening beneath the surface. The collapse you think is the end is actually the beginning. The moment when your old psychology screams the loudest is the moment it is closest to dissolving. That is why so many traders quit right before the shift. They walk away inches from the door. They give up not because they are incapable, but because they mistake the turbulence of change for the failure of change. Let's pause here. Take a breath. We've walked through the myth of the Holy Grail, the 3 mirrors of performance, the brutal awakening of real money, the psychological map that changes everything, the screw it moment, the hidden roots of greed and FOMO, the trap of chasing lucky strikes, and why transformation takes longer than you expected. If your mind feels heavy right now, good. That means you're processing something real. Stay with me. The traders who understand what's coming next are the ones who never blow up again. Section 9, the hidden fear of success. Every trader prepares for the fear of losing, but almost no one prepares for the fear of winning. Yet this is the silent psychological earthquake that strikes the moment you start increasing your position size, the moment profits become meaningful, the moment your goals feel shockingly within reach. Suddenly, it's not just numbers on a screen anymore. It's rent, it's freedom, it's a new identity, it's a new life. And that is exactly why it becomes terrifying. The fear of success is one of the most misunderstood forces in trading psychology. On the surface, it looks like hesitation, overthinking, second-guessing, or shrinking your size right before the breakout. But beneath the surface, something far more primal is happening. Success threatens your self-image. When you scale from 10,000 to 50,000 or from 100 to 1,000, you're not just scaling money, you're scaling your identity. The part of you that is used to scarcity starts panicking. The part of you that survives struggle doesn't trust abundance. The part of you that built a personality around being the underdog has no idea how to exist as the winner. And so, your mind starts whispering questions that feel ridiculous when spoken out loud, but feel paralyzing when left unspoken. What if I can't maintain this? What if I ruin everything? What if I lose the version of myself I'm familiar with? For traders who grew up around instability or financial stress, the fear is even deeper. When your nervous system is wired around survival, stability feels foreign, prosperity feels suspicious, progress feels unsafe. You are emotionally calibrated to chaos, so winning feels like standing on thin ice. You keep waiting for it to crack. This is why scaling triggers old wounds you didn't know you still carried. It's why you start sabotaging profitable days. It's why you cut winners early. It's why you exit too soon, re-enter impulsively, or avoid A-plus setups entirely. You don't fear the trade. You fear the responsibility that comes after the trade. You fear the weight of becoming someone more powerful than you've ever been. Humans fear becoming someone new, even when that new person is stronger, wealthier, and more capable. because becoming someone new means letting go of who you used to be, and identity does not like being replaced. The fear of success is also tied to something deeper, the meaning behind the money. Every trader has a dream attached to their breakthrough: a house, freedom, respect, redemption, security, a new life. When you get close to that dream, suddenly the emotional stakes skyrocket. Success becomes symbolic. This isn't just a trade anymore. It's your childhood wounds, your family history, your future self, your sense of worth, all wrapped around a single candlestick. No wonder your hands shake. No wonder your mind overreacts. You're not reacting to the chart. You're reacting to the meaning you've attached to each move. And yet, the most powerful shift happens when you realize that the fear doesn't signal danger. It signals expansion. The reason it feels scary is because you are stepping into a version of yourself that your past didn't prepare you for. You are breaking out of the psychological cage you grew up in. But this fear of success connects to an even more dangerous psychological trap, one nearly every trader experiences after a major win or a big streak: the silent buildup of overconfidence. Have you ever sabotaged a winning streak? Ever cut a winner early for no logical reason? If success has ever felt more dangerous than failure, comment, "Success scares me." Section 10, the most dangerous enemy: overconfidence in disguise. Overconfidence doesn't announce itself. It doesn't walk in loudly or brag inside your head. It arrives quietly, like a soft shadow behind a winning streak, a whisper of certainty after a perfect setup, a subtle feeling that you finally see the market clearly. It's the most dangerous psychological state, not because it feels bad, but because it feels right. It feels earned. It feels deserved. And that's why it destroys traders more brutally than fear, greed, or even FOMO. The pattern is always eerily similar. You start doing everything right. You follow your rules. You respect your system. You take your setups with discipline. You cut losers early. You let winners run. And the market rewards you, not once, not twice, but repeatedly. Winning streaks stack. Consistency emerges. Confidence grows. Suddenly you feel something shift. You no longer feel like you're trying to be a trader. You feel like you are one. Then, almost imperceptibly, you loosen one rule, then another. You take one trade slightly outside the plan. You scale a little bigger than usual because this one feels obvious. You hold a trade a little longer because the trend is so clear. And the market, cruelly generous in the worst moments, sometimes rewards you. That reward cements the illusion. You start believing you can see more than the market shows. You start believing your intuition is sharper than your rules. You start believing you've leveled up. But that moment is not elevation. It is the beginning of the fall. Professionals call overconfidence emotional inflation. Your expectations inflate faster than your actual skill. The problem isn't that you think you're capable. Confidence is necessary. The problem is when your confidence outruns reality. And when reality hits you back, it doesn't tap you on the shoulder. It punches you in the mouth. This is exactly how the biggest losses happen. Not from fear, not from hesitation, but from certainty. Certainty that you won't be wrong, certainty that the market owes you something, certainty that today should be a winning day, certainty that the streak will magically continue. That certainty blinds you to risk, blinds you to volatility, blinds you to your own vulnerability. Overconfidence doesn't feel emotional. That's what makes it dangerous. It feels logical. It feels calm. It feels like clarity. But it's not clarity. It's cognitive fog disguised as strength. Overconfidence is also fueled by a deeper illusion, the belief that you can predict the future. The moment you believe you know what a candle must do next, you stop trading probabilities and start trading predictions. And predicting is gambling in disguise. When overconfidence kicks in, your mind becomes addicted to being right instead of being aligned with your system. You start framing every setup as a certainty instead of a probability. And once your mindset shifts into prediction mode, you stop adjusting when the market changes. You stop respecting invalidation. You stop taking exits you don't like. You stop seeing danger until it explodes. And when the explosion comes, the psychological collapse is brutal. Because now, it's not just a loss of money, it's a loss of identity. You no longer question the trade, you question yourself. Overconfidence is not the opposite of fear. Overconfidence creates fear. Because after the crash, once you've tasted the fall, your mind becomes terrified of repeating it. And so, you swing to the other extreme: paralysis, hesitation, anxiety around entries. The antidote to overconfidence is not humility, it's structure. Structure keeps you grounded when your emotions inflate. Structure protects you from your own illusions. Structure ensures that no matter how right you feel, your rules remain the only authority. Think about your best winning streak. What stopped it? Did you change something subtle? Size, rules, patience? If overconfidence has ever burned you, comment, "I've felt invincible." Section 11, the trauma of a massive loss. There are losses, and then there are events. A normal loss stings, a bad loss hurts. But a massive loss, one that empties an account, destroys months of progress, erases confidence, or shatters your sense of identity, does something far more devastating. It leaves a psychological scar. And unlike financial damage, psychological scars do not heal with time. They heal with truth. Professionals have worked with traders who didn't just lose money, they lost parts of themselves along with it. People who built their identity around being smart and suddenly felt stupid. People who had been pillars of strength all their lives and suddenly felt broken. Traders who approached the market with excitement and ended up approaching it with dread. A catastrophic loss isn't just a financial event. It is a traumatic emotional rupture. It shakes the foundation of who you believe you are. But the real damage doesn't come from the loss itself. It comes from the story you attach to the loss. One professional once said, "The size of a loss matters less than the meaning you give it." If you interpret the loss as a mistake to learn from, it becomes fuel. If you interpret the loss as a reflection of your identity, it becomes poison. And most traders choose the poison. A massive loss becomes, "I am incompetent, I am stupid, I am irresponsible, I will never succeed. I ruin everything." And once your mind fuses the event with your identity, you stop trying to recover the money. You start trying to recover yourself. That is why trauma from trading lingers long after the charts are closed. That's why your hands tremble when you increase size. That's why you hesitate on perfect setups. That's why you cut winners early even when you know better. You're not afraid of losing money, you're afraid of reliving the moment when the world collapsed under you. Trauma rewires the nervous system. It makes certain sensations feel dangerous. A red candle feels threatening. Drawdown feels suffocating. Volatility feels like an attack. Your body responds before your mind can explain what's happening. Your breathing tightens, your chest closes, your focus narrows, your thoughts scatter. You start trading defensively, timidly, anxiously. You treat the market not as a place of opportunity, but as a place where pain waits for you. And yet, there is a way out. But it requires something counterintuitive. You must go back into the memory you're trying to avoid, not to relive it, but to reframe it. Professionals guide traders through a simple but profoundly uncomfortable exercise. Write the loss as if you are watching someone else experience it. Describe what happened in detail, not the emotion, the sequence, the facts. This separates you from the identity fusion. Then ask a single question. Why does this moment still have power over me? It is never because of the money. It is always because of what the moment represented. Maybe the loss confirmed a childhood belief that you always mess things up. Maybe it triggered memories of chaos you grew up with. Maybe it paralleled a moment when you disappointed someone you loved. Maybe it represented failure in the one area of life where you desperately wanted to win. When traders finally see the true root, the emotional pressure dissolves, not instantly, but steadily. Because trauma thrives in ambiguity. When you expose it to clarity, its power weakens. And once the emotional weight lifts, something new emerges. A quiet strength, a deeper trust in yourself, a new relationship with risk. After a massive loss, traders don't need motivation. They need reconstruction. They need to rebuild not their strategy, but their identity. And once they do, they discover something remarkable. The loss that once haunted them becomes the turning point that transformed them. If you've ever suffered a loss that felt like it broke something inside you, something deeper than money, comment, "I remember." You're not the only one carrying that weight. Section 12. Trading as your final mirror. There comes a moment in every trader's evolution when the charts stop looking like charts. The candles stop looking like data. The profit and loss stops looking like numbers. Instead, the entire market begins to reflect something deeper, something more intimate, something uncomfortably personal. You begin to see that the market has never been your opponent. It has never been your threat. It has never been the thing standing between you and success. The market has always been a mirror, one that reflects your deepest patterns, your hidden wounds, your unspoken fears, your conditioned beliefs, your unresolved memories, your competing identities, and the emotional architecture you've carried your entire life. Some people spend decades in therapy trying to uncover these psychological layers. Traders uncover them in a few months because nothing exposes your inner world faster than putting your money where your insecurities live. This is why trading feels spiritual to some and unbearable to others. It is not the activity itself, it is what the activity reveals. The trader who hesitates isn't battling the chart, they're battling their fear of inadequacy. The trader who revenge trades isn't fighting price, they're fighting the belief that they must not be wrong. The trader who over-leverages isn't trying to be rich, they're trying to escape the emotional discomfort of feeling behind in life. The trader who panics isn't scared of losing money. They're scared of confirming a belief they've carried quietly since childhood, that they're not enough, not capable, not safe. The trader who doesn't scale up isn't avoiding risk. They're avoiding the emotional weight of becoming more powerful than the version of themselves they've grown accustomed to being. This is why professionals call trading the purest psychological mirror on earth, because it exposes everything, and once it exposes you, it gives you a choice. Retreat into your old patterns, or step forward into transformation. Here's the truth most traders never discover. You do not fix your trading by fixing your strategy. You fix your trading by fixing your relationship with yourself. When you become someone who can tolerate discomfort, your drawdowns stop defining you. When you become someone who can regulate emotion, your execution becomes precise. When you become someone who can accept uncertainty, your patience becomes natural. When you become someone who doesn't attach identity to outcomes, your consistency stabilizes. And when you become someone who trusts your own process, your fear dissolves. Mastery in trading is not the mastery of markets. It is the mastery of self. And yet, this is not the end of the journey, because once you understand the mirror, once you integrate the lessons, once you accept that trading is not about being right, but about being aligned, another question emerges: who will you become with this knowledge? Because the market will not stop, the emotions will not disappear, the uncertainty will not soften. What changes is you. You shift from reacting to anticipating, from drowning to observing, from chasing outcomes to executing processes, from proving yourself to expressing yourself, from fighting the market to collaborating with reality. You become the kind of person who doesn't crumble when volatility rises, who doesn't panic when the chart goes red, who doesn't spiral when uncertainty enters the room. You become the trader who sees clearly because you can finally see yourself clearly. And when that transformation happens, trading stops being a battlefield. It becomes a practice, a discipline, a mirror, a path to inner mastery. The greatest edge in trading is not strategy, not indicators, not prediction, and not intuition. The greatest edge is self-awareness. The kind of self-awareness that liberates you from your old patterns, dissolves your illusions, and aligns you with the version of yourself that has been waiting behind the noise. The version capable of consistency, patience, clarity, and emotional strength. The version ready to trade, not as the person you were, but as the person you are becoming. If you've reached this point, then something inside you already knows the truth. You were never fighting the market. You were fighting the parts of yourself you were afraid to confront. And now that you've seen them, now that you've walked through every layer of the mirror, you stand at a crossroads that separates those who repeat their patterns from those who rewrite their story forever. You are not at the end of a video. You are at the beginning of a transformation. What you do next determines the trader you become. Not the version of you who panics, forces trades, or chases opportunity out of fear, but the version who understands the signals within your own mind, who respects the rhythm of your emotions, who executes from clarity instead of desperation, who trusts process over prediction. So here is your invitation. Take one step from this script and apply it today, not tomorrow, today. Start with the psychological map. Write down what you feel before you trade, while you trade, the moment you hesitate, the moment you tilt, the moment the old patterns surge forward. Externalize every emotion. Turn your internal chaos into visible data. Because self-awareness is not an idea, it is a practice. And practice is how identity begins to shift. Then look at your relationship with pressure. Ask yourself where the fear comes from, where the greed comes from, where the urgency comes from. Don't judge it, just name it. Naming a pattern is the first step to dissolving its power over you. And from there, build structure. Build rules that protect you from your worst days. not just optimize your best ones. Build habits that reinforce clarity, not confidence. Build routines that keep you grounded when your mind tries to inflate your expectations. But above all, remember this. You are not alone in this journey. Every trader, no matter how accomplished, disciplined, or profitable, has walked through the same emotional terrain you are navigating. They have felt the same doubt, the same frustration, the same urgency, the same pain. What separates those who rise from those who break is not talent. It is not luck. It is not intelligence. It is the willingness to confront themselves with honesty and to continue even when the work becomes uncomfortable. If this script resonated with you, if it exposed something real, something raw, something you've known deep down but never put into words, then let's take the next step together. Share the part that hit you hardest. Comment the moment you recognized yourself. Tell me which section made you pause and think, "That's me." And if this journey awakened something inside you, if it helped you understand the hidden architecture of your mind, then press subscribe, not for me, but for the version of you that refuses to settle for the trader you were yesterday. Your evolution begins now. Your breakthrough begins here. And the market, for the first time, will no longer feel like an enemy. It will feel like a mirror guiding you toward the trader and the person you were meant to become.